In the heart of a quiet neighborhood, a young girl, Alina, moved frantically through the rooms of her house. If you like real-life stories, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and activate the bell so you don't miss the next videos. Alina was only 13, but she carried a load of heavy emotions inside her. Sitting on the edge of the bed, she stared at her backpack, already almost full of clothes and her precious diary. She felt the world collapsing around her. Her father, Ettore, didn't seem to understand her. He was always too busy with his work as an engineer, too distant to understand her needs. It was a Friday night, and the silence of the house, broken only by the ticking of the clock, made the weight of the argument they had had even more oppressive. Alina went down the stairs, her heart pounding. "Dad," she called in a trembling but determined voice. Ettore looked up from his computer, his expression tired and bored. "What is it now, Alina? I'm very busy." "That's the problem," Alina exploded, feeling tears fill her eyes. "You're always busy. You never have time for me. I'm your daughter, but it seems like I don't exist for you." Ettore sighed, running a hand over his forehead. "I have to work, Alina. I do it to keep this house going, to give you what you need." "I don't need all this," Alina said, her voice breaking with tears. "I need you. If you can't give me this, maybe I'll have to go away. Maybe I'll never come back." Those words weighed on the air like a boulder. Ettore looked at her, shocked. But before he could answer, Alina ran away, climbing the stairs. In her room, tears rolled down her face as she finished packing her backpack. She didn't want to stay in that house where she felt invisible anymore. Ettore, immersed in his thoughts and his work, didn't give much weight to his daughter's words, convinced that it was just a passing outburst. But that night, as the sound of his office door closed, Alina went down the stairs in silence. She grabbed her coat and the few savings she had hidden under the bed, stuffed everything into her backpack, and left through the back door. The night was cold, and the wind whipped her face as she walked away from what was no longer a home to her. She walked quickly through the streets of the neighborhood, never looking back. Her heart was beating fast, filled with a mixture of fear and freedom. She was determined to show her father how hurt she was, even if she knew that running away was an impulsive decision. Soon after, she reached a small park where she sat down on a bench. Around her, everything seemed calm, but inside, she felt a storm of emotions. Time passed slowly, and as she watched the trees sway in the wind, the reality of her loneliness began to dawn on her. She felt more alone than ever. Meanwhile, Ettore, after finishing a long day of work, went up to check on Alina, finding the room empty and the window open. Panic overwhelmed him, and without wasting time, he went out to look for her. Alina, still sitting on the park bench, watched the rain slowly begin to fall. Cold drops slid down her face, merging with her tears. The rain grew harder and harder, and in the distance, the sound of thunder grew more and more threatening. She pulled up the hood of her jacket and looked around for shelter. Across the street, she noticed an old abandoned bus stop. Without thinking twice, she ran toward it, clutching her backpack to her chest. Once there, she crouched in a corner, trying to shelter from the wind and pouring rain. As he tried to warm himself, he noticed a figure crouched in another corner of the stop. It was an older woman with shabby clothes and a tired expression. Her voice, barely audible, cut through the sound of the rain. "Hello, little one. I'm Ginevra." Alina looked at her, guessing she was homeless. "Hello," she replied shyly, moving a little closer. "Why are you here alone on this cold night?" the woman asked, her voice soft and concerned. Alina looked down, tears mixing with the rain. "I can't go home," she whispered. Ginevra looked at her with a look full of understanding and kindness. "Your parents must be very worried." A sudden clap of thunder interrupted the conversation, and the roof of the old bus stop, already in bad shape, gave way. Alina and Ginevra jumped out of the way, avoiding the debris, but getting completely soaked. Alina, despite her fear and cold, grabbed the woman's arm, helping her up. "We have to find another place." Ginevra nodded, trembling. They walked together in the rain without speaking. The rain seemed to have granted a truce, and as they advanced through the wet streets, Alina realized that she was close to her home. "Come with me," he said suddenly, feeling a deep desire to help that woman. "She's nearby." Ginevra looked at her, surprised but grateful. "You are an angel," she murmured, accepting the invitation. When they arrived, Alina opened the door quietly, trying not to make any noise. "Wait here," she said, as she ran to get some dry clothes and a blanket for Ginevra. She gave her everything and then hurried to the kitchen to make her something warm. Meanwhile, Ettore, returning after having searched for Alina in vain, heard noises coming from the kitchen. With his heart in his throat, he went to check, and with great relief, he saw her there, soaked and with an expression of remorse on her face. "Now it's your turn. What would you do in Ettore's place? Write it in the comments below." Alina, feeling guilty, explained everything: the escape, the woman she had found, and the need to help her. Ettore became angry, overwhelmed by worry and anxiety, but there was something in that situation that made him think deeply. Ginevra, feeling the tension, stood up to leave, but it was at that moment that Ettore, listening to her voice, felt a strange sensation of familiarity. "Ginevra?" he asked incredulously. The woman turned and smiled faintly. "Yes, Hector, it's me." Ettore's world stopped for a moment. He remained still, unable to believe his eyes. That woman, who now seemed so fragile, was the same one who had welcomed him and cared for him when his house was empty and devoid of warmth. His memory slowly awakened, bringing with it a wave of emotions. He remembered how Ginevra offered him a snack and a smile every time he came home from school, and how, for him, she had become a sort of safe haven. "Geneva," Hector repeated in a broken voice. "I can't believe it." Ginevra smiled faintly at him, aware of the effect their meeting was having on him. "Time changes us all," she said, her voice sounding like it held years of wisdom and pain. Alina, watching the scene, felt that something important was happening. It was as if her impulsive act of running away had somehow reopened a door into her father's past, a door that perhaps he had kept closed for too long. Ettore slowly approached Ginevra, looking at her with new eyes. "I don't know how you're possible here, in this situation. I never imagined..." His voice cracked as he tried to find the right words. "I can't let you go like this. You've been like a mother to me, and now it's my turn to take care of you. Ginevra looked at him in surprise, but deep down, she knew that those words were sincere. Ettore, for the first time in a long time, felt the need to do something right, to make up for those years of emotional distance that he had created not only with Alina, but also with those who in the past had given him affection. Dad, Alina said, her voice hesitant, I think we have a spare room. Ginevra could stay with us, at least for a while. Hector nodded without hesitation. Yes, that's a good idea. Ginevra, you'll stay here. I promise we'll do everything we can to help you. Ginevra moved, accepted with gratitude. I don't know how to thank you. I never imagined that fate would bring us together in this way. The rain had stopped falling, and the house seemed incredibly warmer. Ettore realized that it wasn't the temperature that had changed, but the atmosphere. He looked at his daughter, finally understanding how much he had neglected her. His eyes filled with remorse, but also with a new determination. He walked over to her, and for the first time in a long time, hugged her. I'm so sorry, Alina, he whispered. I've been an absent father, but I don't want that to be the case. I promise I'll change. Alina returned the hug, feeling something inside her melt. Maybe, she thought, there was still hope for the two of them. Maybe that gesture of generosity towards Ginevra was the beginning of a new phase in their lives. With Ginevra safe and a new sense of closeness between her and her father, Alina finally felt less alone. She had found a strength she didn't know she had, and to her surprise, she realized that her impulsive act of bringing Ginevra home had not only been an act of compassion, but also the catalyst for her reconciliation with her father. That night, Ettore, Alina, and Ginevra had dinner together. The words flowed more easily, and the heavy silence that had marked their lives for so long seemed to finally dissolve. Ettore, with a sincere smile, understood that it was never too late to change. Life had offered him a second chance, and this time, he would not waste it. And what would you have done in Alina's place?